Before we get started, this week's episode of ADSN, big shout out to our first title sponsor, Beehive. Danny, this is a big one.
We're excited. We're buzzing with excitement. In fact, this is the platform built for growth, Substack killer, MailChimp killer. If you've got a newsletter, if you're a creator, you have to check out this platform. We use it. Follow us at theadsn.com. You'll get our weekly newsletter powered by Beehive every single week in your inbox.
If you're in the content game, use Beehive. Now let's get to the show. Welcome back to another week of ADSN. We are here in Los Angeles once again with my incredible co-host, Daniel Druger. Daniel, what do we got, bud?
We're here. We got a long list, as always. Super exciting stuff. Let's start it this week with someone that's Twitter famous. Zero Hedge posted this on X and said, "It gets lost in the news, fire hose, but this is the craziest chart today and maybe this decade." And it's basically a chart showing the decline of general office construction overlaid with the rapid increase of data center construction in dollar value. And we've just crossed kind of the intersection point where data center construction costs have actually exceeded new office construction, which is pretty wild to think about.
Yeah, when I saw this, what I started thinking about was really just it's like solidifying the fact that we now all live in the internet. Like, because it's like, if we're not really, if people like, I mean, and obviously I know there's a bunch of return to office stuff going on right now, but like, generally speaking, it is more valuable for us to go ahead and create digital space via these data centers for everyone than it is to have actual office space. And that is a pretty absurd thing. And obviously, my assumption is these trends don't retreat. Like, historically, I don't think these things do, unless it's just been pulled forward just massively.
Yeah, and I think the data center piece, I mean, we've talked about energy, we've talked about more the OpEx from Amazon to Tesla to SpaceX and Google, et cetera. Like, that is not declining. Like, there's no way that declines. General office construction, we'll see, but yeah, I'm with you. This trend just keeps climbing.
Yeah, sort of along the same lines of basically office space being less of a need. I thought this tweet from Eli Gill was pretty interesting. It basically says, in the short run, many coming, we are doing layoffs due to AI PR. We'll be correcting for the sins of 2020 era of overhiring versus anything to do with AI. Many larger tech companies could slim down 50% without any AI changes. Most AI productivity still around the bend. So a couple of things on this one. And actually our guest this week is Dante Dicicco, who is a product leader from Bock, who was actually impacted by the Bock news. So we'll talk to you about that in a little bit. But I think there's a few things about it. One is that there was obviously overhiring that happened in COVID. Two is this sort of trend, though, to like not investing in office space in general. Like, that is I guess like a leading indicator, like that there probably are going to be, I think, less like actual humans doing work and more agents doing work. And so as a result, you kind of take all those things together and you're like, okay, so there's gonna be way more data centers, gonna be less office space, and companies are gonna be smaller. Like, that is setting up. Now, I do wonder at some point if companies are gonna start reporting how many AI agents they have on staff. Like, what's the average cost to
the revenue per agent?
Yeah. That's RPA. I wonder if you have to start, like, we talked about this last week, the Web 4.0, but like the sovereign AI agents. I wonder if you could incentivize them with stock. Give them access to a Robinhood account and be like, help make this business better. And
instead of working 24/7, go find some new hours in the day or go delegate a little bit more.
Well, you can go buy more compute because of that.
Yeah.
We should pay, next startup we do, I'm paying agents in stock.
Which actually, a funny anecdote is everyone in COVID was getting in trouble because you'd hear these jobs of people delegating overseas their job. We're all doing it now. It's like, I'm going to go get 6 agents to help me do my job. And I'm going to get paid to do it and told to do it. Yeah. But,
well, I know it's, Evan Orenstein a few weeks ago commented on a post that we put out on the ADSN LinkedIn page about how, like, it used to be in ads, you were trying to avoid bots, and now you're being rewarded to engage with them and to empower them. So yes, shit's getting weird. I'd say that's a good takeaway.
It's getting very weird. Yeah.
But yes, I guess along the lines of bots, this Nikita post is pretty interesting. You want to tell us what this one's about?
So yeah, this post you're saying by Nikita Beer had a product at X. Really gets to that bot agent kind of world that we're starting to live in. Basically, a wave of Iranian bots being filtered out, and he posted an image of kind of the spike over the weekend. So really fascinating kind of thought about like these agents now. They're good actors, there's bad actors, and there's some different actors. And so we're going to start to see more of that happen. And so this is an interesting way of looking at it.
The bots are coming. They're going to be
the bots are here
than humans. The bots are here. I think there'll be a lot more bots than humans, which is going to lead to more data centers. I'm just curious actually how many of these bots are being created by bots. Like I'm obviously it's like not a joking manner. Like there's obviously the war with Iran is not trivial, but like I am curious to know like are the Iranians using Claude code? Like I wonder if there's a way that if you could back into like what is actually behind this and how like sophisticated it really is.
And then how much of this then you get bots just battling bots who are creating more bots, and you just have this spiral.
It's a spiral. It's a spiral, and
get us out of the bot world. You have one this week that has nothing to do with bots. So what's this one by Hashir?
This one is very, very non-bot, and it's basically Ben Horowitz of Andreessen Horowitz fame on why sales guys make more than engineers. And this is something that like I think good salespeople are just going to become even more valuable than they already are. I was talking to a friend about this morning, who has like a startup idea that they're working on, and it's crazy to think that like the friend was like, "Listen, this is like an enterprise like focused product. Like I'm not worried about the product itself. Like I'll get it built. I'm like good at Cursor, I'm good at Claude Code, but like I just need someone who's gonna like go on planes and go, get shit done, close deals." And like that is just so different than how it used to be for someone who was thinking about starting a company. And like this guy I was talking to, he's going to go raise venture capital. Like, and he's like somewhat technical, and he's just going to basically like, if he gets the sales guy, in this case, a guy, could be a woman too, but in this case, a guy, that he wants, like, I think they can show up with like one product guy, an incredible salesperson, and a working version of a product that was made via Claude Code. And I think you get a lot done. So it's pretty wild.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've all worked with, good salespeople or been the recipient of a salesperson pitching us who's really good. And you can tell the difference, right? I think AI has closed the gap on the engineering side. And we talked to Mike Christo a few weeks back on that. And so like the good versus bad, that gap has closed a lot. Like you're saying, like sales, it is still very clear who's great and who's not so good.
Yeah.
So I agree.
This is a good moment to reflect on who is the best salesperson that we've ever worked with.
We're still working with some of them, I've got to say.
We're still working with some of them. That is true. I live with one who's a retired, incredible one. Christina was so good.
Yeah, she was so good. She's retired now. Yeah.
She's who's really good. Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'd love to talk to, we got to get, I'm going to do a mid-episode RFP, and I think we should get Luke Callis on this podcast, who's like one of the best sales leaders I've ever worked with.
Yeah.
And talk to him about how in the world could AI ever make him not replaceable or make him replaceable. I'd love to know like what does Callis think AI has to do to replace him? So let's see if maybe we can get, that's a good RFP.
That's a good RFP. The first ever mid-episode RFP. Let's go. Yes. Luke Callis.
You know what?
Come join the pod.
ESN, the rules are fluid here. We can do, we can just do things. So yes.
All right. Get that man on the hot seat.
Yes. So I guess with that, tell us about what's going on with BK.
Yeah, so BK, not Brian Kim, last week's guest. We're switching over to Burger King this week, which is fun because we're going to talk to Dante, as you said, who's a restaurant owner as well. But anyway, Burger King just introduced a new chatbot. They're calling Patty. So kudos to the creative person there. and it's AI voice powered by OpenAI base model. And it's going to live inside employees' headsets to collect data on friendliness and simplify workflow. So that's the announcement. And I actually love this. This is like a really fun way of introducing it in a simple, straightforward way for a business. They're personifying it. They're using a base model. Like, to me, this is foundational for most companies. And kudos to Burger King for kind of jumping in, having some fun with it, but actually using it for real.
I thought the article was pretty interesting. So the chief digital officer of Burger King, basically was talking about how the system will gather data points from employees' interactions with customers using, for example, keywords like welcome, please, and thank you, which the company said it explored as a signal to help managers understand service patterns. And then he goes on to say, it's really a coaching tool, right? To help you as an employee become more hospitable. And we're going to help you also with certain operation flaws that may occur that can be a little bit complex. If I worked at Burger King and this is, I think this is clearly this is like B2B spyware.
Yeah, it was 100% spyware. Yeah.
But it was cool. He tried to spin it as coaching software.
And they call it Patty. It's this cute thing. But if you're, talking about Callus and sales, all these employees are in sales. And so to Burger King, it's like, how do we level up the worst performers to be friendly or whatever? But 100% spyware. No question.
It is, but they're rolling it out in 500 locations. It just is another example. If you think about what we've even talked about now, this thing is like a runaway train. It is going everywhere. So the fact that it's now going to be from if you look at extremely kind of high paying engineering jobs to now more entry level jobs at Burger King, this is basically every single application just got electricity or the internet. Yeah. So it is going to change a lot of things, my friend. But I would like to go to Burger King at some point, and I'll say thank you 10 times so they can make sure their patty score is very high.
All right, get us back to advertising land. What's some things happening in advertising?
Google is rolling out basically text guidelines across AI Max and Performance Max. Basically, this is going to be allowing people to scale their creative assets in text-based ads. And so AI can basically hold up the integrity. So you can basically steer the AI, be like, don't go ahead and mention cheap. Don't go ahead and put things on a discount. I think the kind of key thing here, we've talked about this a lot, but so creative is going to become fluid and autonomous. And the raw number of pure pieces of creative, the atomic unit of creative is about to go parabolic. And we're good. This is just, I would say as someone as someone who's in the ads industry, it's just Google and everyone are just going to keep on moving the goalpost in terms of what is table stakes. So if you are not helping people pump out creative, you are taxing them and making their lives a bigger pain. And, it's hard enough to succeed in these sort of digital marketplaces. So I think this one's just a reminder, like everything else we kind of said, which is the AI stuff is infecting everything. And so you better, if you're a PM, you really got to make sure you think about it.
Yeah. And I think going then to our next post from Nate Lorenzen, I think is in a very similar vein, who's kind of one of the leaders in the space, in paid marketing. His agency was acquired. And he's posing the thought of what he said is, it'd be amazing if Ads Manager had a memory. Keep the human in the loop, but add to their experience. Remember the settings they typically place. And then he goes on to kind of describe some of the use cases. And I think it is what you just described with Google, what Meta's doing with Manus. It is this thing where now you have an agent with you, a collaborator that has this memory that will kind of work with you on creative, like you said, make that parabolic. We'll work with you on recommendations, and it becomes just somebody sitting alongside you, helping every step of the way, and knows your business in and out.
Yeah, I think there's a few things about this one that kind of, well, first of all, I think Nate is just a very, very good follow on X. He's got good zingers. I think he really understands the ads business. I think he's a must follow. The The part though, when he talks about send a digest of relevant case studies and materials based on what's run on the account, this is the one where I think he's totally right about it. I think it's a great idea. I also think this is another area where you're going to see, if you are not a great salesperson and you work at somewhere like Meta, you may get replaced by an AI sales partner, right? This is basically an AI client partner, right? That's sitting inside your ad manager, knows everything about your business, and is just trying to make sure that you get the best service humanly possible. And I have a feeling that probably becomes the base case sort of customer experience for advertisers of these giant platforms over time. And then, you're going to be pretty special in terms of how much you spend to get a human being, right? I think it's like, the days of like having AEs on every single account are going to be limited. So like, as I say it, we should, it's like, it seems like it's really like scary because we're going to fire more people, but like that, I think that's what's happening. And then I can imagine that happening pretty quickly as well.
Yeah. I think on the counter to that, and maybe I'm closer to this camp. I know you're full red pilled. I'm maybe like still holding the pill a little bit. But we've got another great follow in Sean Frank, who writes, building agents now is like building GeoCity sites in 1995 for those of us who are millennials and that generation who remember GeoCities. He says it's an amazing scale and definitely where the world is going. Dozens of jobs will be extinct because of agents by 2030, but the value will happen in 2 years when someone builds the Google of the agentic world. And that's maybe the camp that I'm in, is that this is no doubt going to happen, and it is happening, and we're watching it in real time. But I think we're still in kind of that toy phase of like people figuring this out, playing around with it, putting it in places, people leaning in because it's new, it's shiny, it's exciting. But I think the real tipping point is probably 2030.
Yes, I think it's still like, it's not here tomorrow, but I think the cat's out of the bag.
Yeah.
And I think the part that is maybe like different, because it's so easy to basically add AI to these products and services, it's just like crazy to think like there's 10 million Meta advertisers, right? Yeah. Like you could just like kind of like, and not a lot of work, I think you can go ahead and get 10 million people to have a totally different expectation around their workflow.
Yeah.
And like, that's the scary part, is that like the scale that we're talking about here is different than other things. And so, I think you have to learn this stuff, and I hope it doesn't, and I'm not a doomer, actually. I'm like super positive. I think it's going to lead to a bunch of new jobs and a bunch of different things. I think everyone's going to make more entrepreneurs, all that stuff. I just think there's going to be like a massive amount of displacement from like old jobs and new jobs as these AIs sort of take over.
Yeah.
But let's see.
Yeah, no doubt. All right. Why don't we jump into our primary post this week? I'm going to start. I'm going to take the bull by the horn. I'm going to start. I've got one by another great follow, one James Barrow, I think you may be familiar with, the new general manager of Universal Ads announced last week. That's not the post, but shout out to you.
Thanks, bud.
Of course. But no, you posted something over the weekend. Normally you share this before you post. So I saw this in the morning. You wrote, sleeper AI impact is that procurement just became a strategic function at every enterprise company. I think I kind of get it, but I want you to break it. We're doing a live primary post breakdown today. I want you to explain this to us.
I am flattered that of all the posts in the whole world that you picked one of mine. It's just, if basically AI are like people, so it's like synthetic human beings, and procurement is basically buying access to this talent pool, it's really interesting to think that it used to be like procurement was like figuring out what software I could use. Like this is like, okay, well, I have to have the best designer possible. Like I need access to the best designer. That's pretty, like right now, it's not settled what it's going to be. And so I think if you're like a really big corporation, you got to be really thinking strategically about like, how do I onboard the best AI tools? How do I analyze these agents? How do I make sure my teams have access to it? And, if you're not looking in that way, and you're just looking at this as like SaaS contracts, like you're kind of toast, because it's like digital recruiting. It's like talent assessment. And, we were talking about this earlier. It's like, I think companies probably will start to report about how many active agents they have, right? And like what agents are performing the best and things like that. Like it's part of the workforce. It's really kind of like, it's like it's moved from being SaaS contracts to workforce planning, which is a different function, I think, than what traditional procurement teams had. So that is why I wrote that.
I like it.
On Saturday.
Okay.
And my wife was like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, you got to get more hobbies. You got to get more hobbies, and I got to start posting more, because unless your primary post is me, I've got some work to do.
My primary post is not by you.
All right.
It is from Brian Armstrong, CEO of Coinbase. And he says about the AI agents that they're using, we're giving them all stablecoin wallets. If you really want to treat them like digital employees, they need to have a corporate card. But traditional corporate cards can't be issued to non-human entities. This to me is just awesome because I talk about this, I think, every single week. And I think it's like finally we have the killer use case for crypto and wallets. But I also think it's just really, really interesting to think that agents are going to be hiring agents. And if that's the case, so if your company has a team of agents that are hiring other agents, how are you going to make sure that your company is even like allowing you to do that? How are you going to fund it? How do you make sure it keeps in the budget? Like this breaks everything about how B2B spend works. And I think that's why this is really interesting. And we will find out more about things along these lines with our guest coming up. It's Dante Dicicco.
Let's do it.
Normally a Block, but he's going to tell us all about this stuff outside of crypto. He'll tell us what's happening with restaurants in particular. But yeah, let's go.
Let's go. All right. Now we've got Dante Dicicco, former head of product, a vendor and procurement at Block. His company ZD was acquired by Block, I think, last year timeframe. Dante is also a friend from Snap, so a lot of history there. Dante is also on Main Street. He's a restaurateur, restaurant owner, and he's a new dad. So Dante, welcome. Thank you for carving out some time. You're awfully busy, so we appreciate it.
No, thanks guys so much for having me. And we obviously go way back from our Snap days, and no shortage of things to keep me busy, especially with 2 little ones and a 4-week-old running around.
Yeah. So I mean, I think the sort of news of the day, obviously, is that Block went through like a major restructuring. I know your team was impacted, and I think the sort of narrative in market was really around like this is sort of kind of the first of like a new wave probably of like big enterprise companies kind of being AI pilled, and as a result changing the mix shift. And I think what we'd love to get from your perspective is really just like maybe how real is that, like how AI pilled is Block maybe, but then also just more generally, like as a product leader who like I know you are extremely kind of AI first, everything. I've seen a bunch of the stuff you vibe coded. They're awesome. But like kind of just like, where's the state of it as a product leader right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So no, thanks for that. Thanks for having me on. I think and even to start and to level set, my team was impacted by the recent like reduction at Block. I'm super proud of everything that our team's built kind of during our time there, and grateful for the opportunity that Block gave us throughout. I mean, I think them acquiring ZD in 2024 was a great opportunity for us to take what we built for those couple of years before that and bring it to market at scale, which we accomplished in a great deal. I think that to your point on the AI pilled and the nature of that, I think it's important to note that no 2 companies are created equal, and it really all goes down to like who is the customer of the company that we're talking about, like who's the customer of the subject company, and how are we going to meet the needs of that customer as effectively as possible, and how can AI do that? So even if you're looking at a Block, specifically Square, whose customers are a lot of restaurants and grocery stores and stuff like that, compared to a company like Snapchat, right, where it's like you're talking about millennials and Gen Z use, like there's wildly different ways to meet the needs of those customers. And so I think the AI layer has to be viewed in context of those 2 things. Happy to go into more detail on that, but those are kind of like just high level thoughts.
Yeah, well, I guess maybe like for your time, like working on, the product team there, like were you guys using these AI tools? Are they like good enough to meet the needs of like a local Italian restaurant, which like your family and you have some? Like how, I get where, like understanding the needs of a consumer, I can imagine how you get like really good feedback loop, but like how are you going to get like all these SMBs to kind of lean into this with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so the primary tool that Block launched, and this is all public information, they launched over a year ago. It's called Goose, and it's open source. It's public. Anyone can download it onto their desktop device, and it integrates through MCP with all the a lot of applications you have, Google Drive, Slack, all that stuff, and then it's built on top of any of the major models that you would want to use, whether it's Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, or whatnot. So honestly, when Open Claude came out, Claudebot and stuff came out like a few months ago, some of us kind of laughed because like, that's kind of Goose. Like Block had kind of like built their own version of this internally over a year ago and then launched it publicly, and it's out there and stuff. So it was an incredibly impressive accomplishment there. And I think that the benefit of being in product at Block is that we were using that daily, and we were using that to spin up prototypes, to automate some processes, right? Like I think just putting it on like autonomous and just having it send Slack messages to entire channels on your behalf based on what you're working on is like a little nerve-wracking at first, but it kind of works, right? So there are a lot of like baseline tools that have been implemented over the last year that particularly the product team, I think we're power users of. Engineering was probably using more like things like Claude Code directly and probably more into Cursor and stuff like that. So from that perspective, they did make a lot of strides in tools over that year and did that. I think getting down to the nitty gritty of the customer itself. And this is where, like, from my perspective, I'm not only a former product leader at Square, but I'm also a Square customer because I'm my restaurant that I own, my family owns Dicicco's Italian restaurant. We're Square sellers. So it's literally Square's core product is embedded into our entire restaurant business. And when you think about the needs of a restaurant, right? On one side, there's always going to be a lot of bespoke features that restaurants request. So the ability to churn out those features faster is incredibly appealing, right? So that's like where, like, Score in the win column for like the AI tools, right? And it's more like one of those things that Square started out as this horizontal player. Toast emerged because it was very specific in restaurants. Well, now if you look at the list of all Square's feature gaps to Toast, and if Square wants to close the gap with restaurants specifically, the barrier is just reduced significantly for us to be able to like close that gap, ship those features. But then it becomes, how do you know the features that are gaps in the first place, right? And that's where that deep, detailed customer discovery has to come into place. And even looking at the specific area of the product that I focus on, which was vendors and procurement, it's how do restaurants purchase ingredients from all their vendors and interact with the broader food supply chain. And a lot of that comes into like, how are vendor catalogs structured? Are vendors even willing to be transparent about prices? Are vendors even willing to share prices with the restaurant in general? Like a lot of times restaurants say, I'm going to order 3 cases of chicken, and the supplier won't even tell them that and what the price was until they invoice them in person. That's a hard thing for AI to figure out unless like you're really immersed with the restaurant and know that transparency around this topic is such a pain point, and then it can be complex how to solve it. So I would kind of bucket those into a few different categories. There's like when you can identify feature gaps, a lot less resistance to getting those done quickly. But then when you're dealing with small to medium-sized businesses like Square, like restaurants, and retail establishments and stuff like that, there's a lot more immersion in the company's business that kind of needs to be done.
And how do you think about like adoption with those companies? Because we're all in tech every day, and so all we hear about all day, every day is AI, the latest and greatest tools, how we can use them. But I imagine the customers you've been working with for so long, they're not AI first. They're worried about, like you said, their suppliers. What are they getting today? What's the cost of goods? How are they delivering it to the customer? And so how do you get them excited about AI when that's not necessarily their focus?
Yeah. So honestly, and this is completely speaking from personal experience. This is kind of a mix of my Square and Zed experience. a lot of cases, restaurants are allergic to AI specifically. Like if you tell them like, hey, we built this great feature where we can take your menu and then generate a full ingredients list for you, a full, essentially a vendor shopping list in seconds when it would have taken you hours or days to do, but it's AI generated. They'd be like, I want no part of this, right? Because because one, they're like, you're looking at my menu. Why are you looking at my menu? And we're like, but Square is sitting on your menu data. Like, why does that matter? We already have it, right? But I think there's kind of this, like, when you're talking to Main Street businesses, the perception of AI is not nearly as positive as it is in tech. And that's a real thing. And then number two is the credibility of that data. If I'm a restaurant and AI is generating me an ingredients list, it can't be 99% right. It has to be perfect. Because if it's not perfect, my kitchen manager can order the wrong type of ingredient for my restaurant, and now my inventory is messed up, and it's had a real impact on my business. So unless it can actually nail that with a level of perfection, it's not worth doing, because the customer is going to have that doubt and they're not going to trust it, right? So there's that, and those are like very interesting insights that my team and I dealt with over the last year and a half, because we had initially thought like, hey, this is going to be the greatest thing ever. We're going to whatever. And so as we progressed, my kind of personal point of view on this is, when you're dealing with small and medium-sized businesses and restaurants, right? AI is probably at its best when it's this invisible layer behind the curtain, powering what's actually valuable to the user. It doesn't necessarily have to be this AI user-facing experience, right? Like, restaurants don't need a chatbot to ask questions around all this stuff. Like, they just want to see, like, how can I optimize my labor costs? Like, how can I optimize my food costs? What were my sales yesterday? What menu items, have been selling well recently? How are my weekends versus my weekdays and peak hours? And did we make, how did Valentine's Day this year compare to Valentine's Day last year in terms of sales? And like, asking an open-ended chatbot that, or working on it through like an agentic interface, is not something that particularly not most like sole proprietor Main Street restaurant businesses are going to want to do. But if you give them kind of more easy to use, simple dashboard-like tools that they're familiar with, but AI is powering on the back end, making those as powerful as possible and giving them more information quickly and more bespoke to their business, that's how I think you can really bridge that gap and drive a really meaningful experience for them.
And I guess, like, as a restaurant owner, I don't know if you can answer this, but like, are you, now that you are not a Bock employee, but you're a Bock customer, are you nervous that this like AI pill, like, getting rid of half, the employees, like, are they going to be able to like meet these SMBs where they are? Like, it's, to your point, there's a lot of like feet on the street and like real conversations and like effort that to build great software for SMBs. Like, are you nervous that they're going to overdo it?
Yeah. So there's, so I think there's a lot of nuance there. And so, speaking entirely as a restaurant owner, right? Like, speaking entirely as a restaurant owner here, when we moved to Square's payment processing rates are significantly below, like tens of basis points below what other point of sale, other processors are. So we're saving annualized tens of thousands of dollars a year for our restaurant just by using Square's processor, just because Square has so much more economies of scale than anybody else, right? So that also, like, that in my view is one of Square's deepest moats, and that transcends like what the SaaS fees or anything like that, because that's more like, it actually puts more pressure on like a Toast to have feature gaps that are more, because it's like, what are these features actually worth, right? Am I paying a 0.5% less in processing? Like, maybe I'm willing to sacrifice some of that. So as a restaurant owner, one, very happy with Square on like that, the kind of the unit economics of the location. I think when it comes to sales and customer support, that's an area where, as a restaurant owner, I'd want to see AI lean in, like I'd want that area to be AI pilled even more, right? Because I think right now as a restaurant, if you're dealing with, you always want to be dealing with a human, the human may not be available and stuff. I just want my questions answered quickly, right? If I'm having printer connectivity issues, I don't want to wait for someone to like call me back over the weekend or on a Monday. I want this issue fixed now. So I almost think that like the biggest area of impact for Square and companies like Square is completely agentifying the customer success experience in a way that makes it completely actionable. Like I believe that the first point of sale, restaurant point of sale that does that in a serious way will win, irrespective of feature gaps. So that's like kind of one big area. The rest of it is more, yeah, I think there's always going to be a concern of responsiveness of shipping features. But that's also like kind of exists in tech anyways when we're dealing with that. So I'm not really sure if like restaurants are going to see an adverse impact on that side of things in the short to medium term. And I think they have a long time to figure it out. But I think really where as a restaurant owner, you're kind of looking at and assuming that other companies are going to be doing similar things. It's more of like, what are my unit economics for the location? What's my payment processing? What's my SaaS? Then on top of that, what's my customer support infrastructure? And then on top of that, what are the feature gaps relative to what I need?
And I guess from a maybe like more macro kind of perspective before we let you go, like, you described like Goose and the stuff that, Bock like did implement AI tooling more aggressively than most places, right? Like that's like, it's like pretty impressive that you guys like, I have many stories of friends that are at publicly traded companies that are like begging to get like legit access to Claude, right? So like, it's like very different than like that. Right. But so do you think that this is like, as a PM, I guess, like, do you think this is the first of many of these companies to do these like pretty drastic cuts? Or do you think Block was just kind of so uniquely AI first that like it allowed Jack to like make that bet? Do you have like a sense of where we are? Is this the beginning of like a lot of this or what do you think?
Yeah. So, again, this is my personal opinion on this. Could be wrong. Whatever. Like, so, my thoughts on this are to your point, because Block was so early in adopting these tools, like literally an in-house O&O, which eventually was open source AI agent on your desktop that did all this and had like a full year of, it's employees using this and stuff. They were well positioned to make the bet. If another company wanted to come in and copycat Block, but hadn't done any of that hard technical work and not just technical, but like discovery work with their own employees, they wouldn't be capable of doing that. Then it would just be like a headcount reduction thing. So I do think that from that perspective, they're probably better positioned than most. But then on top of that, in terms of like, how to think about like the industry trend in general, being in a product person, you kind of always think of like, what's the ideal product to engineering ratio, right? It's like maybe 10 to 20 people, like 1 PM to 10 to 20 engineers. Well, using Claude Code and Cursor, 1 PM could be mapped to like 200 engineers or like 600, right? Engineers defined as Claude agents, right? So if that's how you think about staffing a product org, I think that almost reframes the company top down. So what's to stop a company from mapping, every PM should have X amount of human engineers and then X hundred of agent engineers. And that's how staffing should be thought about. And then the engineers that are mapped to that person can almost be overseeing how what's built is being integrated into the system most effectively. And so like a company like Square, right? You're dealing with payments, you're dealing with banking, you're dealing with like the financial system. Like it's not as simple as just like shipping code with an agent. Like it has to be connected to a very complex system in a way that doesn't break. And so that's kind of how I would think about it too. So it's more like on one side on the Block thing. Yeah, I think that Block was uniquely positioned I think if other companies out there have been doing the hard work Bock has been doing for the last year plus, they're probably in a good spot to do the same thing. But if a company is just trying to copycat and hasn't done it, like, as a shareholder, I would sell now, right? Yeah. And as an employee, I would start looking for their job now, right? Because I wouldn't even want to stay, right? But then yeah, on the other side, industry wide, I would think about PM to engineer staffing in the context of an agentic world and how to get the most output over the trio of PM to engineering agent to engineering human / manager, and building an org that way. And from that perspective, I think it is incredibly exciting. What we always talk about how exciting it is for like startups right now and how much startups are going to do. Think about how exciting it is for the companies that are large enough to have the resources to staff up all that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like anybody in product, leader or like IC needs to listen to that like clip right there that you just described, because it really is like, how do you start to get more leverage out of the existing resources and then expand that to get even more leverage and have this kind of snowball effect.
Right.
But I love to hear kind of your like PM mindset on that. And so now, because you think so analytically and so product minded, but you're also running a restaurant and there's so many Main Street kind of offline in real life companies that operate, like where does a company like Dicicco's or another offline SMB, where do they start to get leverage from AI? Like where in your mind is there going to start to be separation between those companies, if any, using AI or anything else?
Are you going to get robot servers in your restaurant if you look at them?
No, I think I'm more bullish on robots in the kitchen more so than robots in the front of the house. I think when people dine in, and there's a huge difference between quick service restaurants and full service, right? If you're quick service, you're going to order at the counter. Yeah, go nuts. Kiosk, bots, everything, right? If you're going for a dine-in experience, as a customer, you're paying up for the atmosphere. You're paying for all that, and that requires as much human touch as possible, in my opinion. When it comes to the restaurants, and I'll say restaurants specifically, the only two technology providers that are required in your stack that are like mandatory, right? Are your bank, right? So like literally where your money's going, and your system of record, right? Where are your actual payments being processed, and what's feeding into your general ledger. Everything else, every other SaaS tool you use is completely optional, right? They're nice to haves that can layer on each other, but they're completely optional. So the system of record companies like Square, like Toast, like Clover, like even the old school ones like Aloha and stuff, they do have a moat because they're the systems of record for the restaurant. Like you can't AI out a system of record, right? But now those companies almost have whether like it or not, have almost a fiduciary duty to their customers, to the restaurants, to be their tech advisor. Because a restaurant could hire a consultant or whatever, but anyone they hire to give them advice is just someone for hire, kind of a mercenary. The system of record is their partner who's deeply integrated into their business. So that's why I think the system of record companies that give the restaurants more tools and again, like I said earlier, are able to get feedback on what the restaurants actually need faster are the ones that are going to win. And that requires this delicate dance of get feedback from the customer in a nuanced and immersive way first, then be able to ship the features that relate to the things that are needed as quickly and efficiently as possible in a way that's integrated to a complex system like a system of record. So I feel like on the physical side, bots, maybe for QSR, I think for full service stuff, I would avoid bots at all costs because that's not the experience customers are paying for. And then on the tech stack side, the system of record companies need to assert themselves as the de facto tech advisors because that's essentially what they're becoming. And then going back to myself as a restaurant owner, I need to look deep into my business and say, where are the gaps that I have right now? And I could tell you just like a tangent anecdote for Dicicco's. And I know I've known you guys for a long time. I'm sure you guys have looked up Diciccos.com many times, and the website was like unbelievably old school, right? If you look up Diciccos.com right now, the website is unbelievable, right? And we, as a restaurant owner, a couple and a tech focused person, right? A couple months ago, I was looking at, okay, who is the best, not just like does Square have a good online tool, who is the best in class at spinning up an e-commerce type site for our restaurant in a way that's going to drive the strongest Google SEO results, strongest online sales, and be like another real channel that can compete with DoorDash, because DoorDash's fees are insane, right? And through my knowledge of the industry, I know the founders of owner.com, they just hit unicorn status a couple months ago. So we decided to implement owner.com in our business using the Square integration. It's gone incredibly well, right? And so that's an example of something that like, owner.com's skill set of powering the digital presence of a restaurant, connecting to POS and stuff, like, should the system of records be able to do what owner.com is doing? Absolutely. But like at this point in time, they are so much better than anybody else out there. And as a restaurant, I had to make the pragmatic decision. Do I want to pay nothing incremental and use what's available to me, or make the investment in an incremental point, really a point solution, but something that I know my business needs significantly, right? And we're already seeing we've like 3.5x online sales in the last like month and a half. So it's without paying DoorDash fees, right? So it's clearly working, but that's where there's going to have to be some responsibility on the restaurant side too, of looking into their business, assessing what the needs are, surveying the market, and then making the decision like, does my default tech advisor give me what I need, or do I need to go elsewhere? But there just should be a lot more rigor on that. Do I need to go elsewhere decision?
Yeah.
Basically.
Well, I mean, Dante, this was a unique and fun conversation, obviously, because we know you, but also because you're wearing two hats in this conversation as a product leader from Bock and also as a restaurant owner. So kind of an expert in both domains. So we appreciate you joining, giving us the perspective on both sides. And anyone in product needs to go, we'll clip it, but needs to go listen to your description of what's coming. So appreciate it, man.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
bud. Thanks for doing this on Pat Leave.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, get back to parenting.
You got it. Thank my wife. Thank Jennifer for this. But yes. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, bud.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.